He thought it was just another quiet evening on the road home, until he saw the blood on the asphalt and a hand reaching out from the darkness. What this single dad did next would change lives and reveal a truth the entire army tried to forget. The rain fell in relentless sheets that night, the kind of storm that swallowed the world in darkness and noise. Ethan Miller, a 35-year-old single father with the weary eyes of a man who had seen too much life, gripped the steering wheel of his old pickup truck as it rattled down the winding country road. His daughter, Lily, had been running a fever all day, and the small-town pharmacy had been his last hope before closing. The road home was long, silent, and empty, until it wasn't. Through the fogged windshield, a flash of movement caught his eye. For a heartbeat, he thought it was an animal. Then the headlights fell on something far worse, a person lying face down on the asphalt, half in the ditch, half in the rain. Ethan slammed the brakes, the truck skidding to a halt, tires hissing against the wet road. His heart pounded as he jumped out, the cold rain instantly soaking through his flannel shirt. "Hey, can you hear me?" he shouted over the storm. The figure didn't move. He knelt down, mud splashing up his jeans, and turned her gently onto her back. A young woman, her face pale, her lips trembling, blood seeping from a wound near her ribs. Her uniform was unmistakable. Camouflage fatigues, the name patch barely visible under dirt and blood. She was a soldier. Her eyes fluttered open, blue and full of terror. "Don't let them find me," she whispered weakly, her hand gripping his sleeve before going limp. Ethan froze, confusion and adrenaline crashing together in his chest. Who's after you?" he asked, but her eyes rolled back. He didn't wait for answers. He knew what it meant to see someone at the edge of life. He'd seen it once before, when his wife died giving birth to Lily. He wasn't about to lose another soul tonight. With trembling strength, he lifted her into his arms, her blood staining his jacket, and carried her to the truck. Rain poured harder, drumming against the metal roof as he laid her gently across the back seat, covering her with his worn blanket. The drive back home was chaos, lightning flashing through the trees, tires splashing through puddles, and Ethan's mind racing faster than the storm. Who was she? What had happened out here in the middle of nowhere? And why was a soldier, someone trained, armed, and disciplined, running from someone? By the time he reached the cabin, his hands were shaking, his heart heavy with fear and duty. He carried her inside, placed her on the old couch near the fireplace, and whispered to himself, "You're safe now. Whoever you are." He didn't know it yet, but this act of compassion, born from instinct and heart, would soon pull him into a world of military secrets, betrayal, and redemption. A single moment on a stormy road had changed everything. Ethan worked through the night, every second feeling like a race against death. The storm still raged outside, wind howling through the pines as he tore through his cabinets for bandages, alcohol, and the old first aid kit he hadn't touched since his brother's accident years ago. He lit the fireplace, the orange glow flickering across the cabin walls as the woman's face came into view. Young, maybe late 20s, her skin ghost pale beneath streaks of rain and blood. Her dog tags were half hidden under her torn fatigues, the name barely readable, Sergeant Claire Dawson. Ethan cleaned her wound carefully, remembering the emergency tips his late brother, a field medic, had taught him. She stirred in pain, whispering incoherent words about coordinates and a leak inside command. Her voice was cracked, but carried a tone of desperation, the kind that came from betrayal. Ethan didn't press for answers. He just focused on keeping her alive. By dawn, the rain had quieted, and Lily's soft footsteps echoed down the hallway. She rubbed her sleepy eyes, clutching her stuffed rabbit, and froze when she saw the wounded woman on their couch. "Daddy, who is she?" Lily whispered. Ethan smiled weakly, brushing her hair aside. "She's a friend who needs our help." Lily, ever trusting, nodded and tiptoed closer, her little fingers holding out a glass of water. Claire's eyes fluttered open, her gaze darting between Ethan and the child. For a moment, fear flashed in them, raw, instinctive fear. But when she saw Lily's small, innocent face, something shifted. She took the glass with trembling hands and whispered, "Thank you." That was the first time she'd spoken without fear in her voice. Over the next few hours, Ethan learned bits and pieces as she regained strength. Claire had been part of a covert operation, something called Falcon. She'd uncovered evidence of corruption and illegal weapons deals involving high-ranking officers. Before she could report it, she'd been ambushed. "They want me gone," she said quietly, staring into the fire. "And now, you're in danger for helping me." Ethan's jaw tightened. "I've faced worse," he muttered, though inside, fear gnawed at him. He was just a mechanic, a father trying to protect his little girl. He hadn't asked for this, but he couldn't walk away either. That night, as Lily slept beside her stuffed rabbit, Claire sat by the window, watching lightning fade in the distance. She turned to Ethan and said softly, "Why did you stop for me?" He looked at her, the fire reflecting in his tired eyes. "Because someone should have stopped for my wife that night too." The silence that followed was heavy, filled with unspoken pain, gratitude, and something deeper. Outside, the last drops of rain fell from the roof. Inside, 2 broken lives bound by chance began to heal. But unknown to them, far beyond the forest road, black SUVs rolled through the night, following the trail that led straight to Ethan's cabin. 3 days had passed since Ethan had found Sergeant Claire Dawson bleeding on the roadside, and the quiet life he once knew had begun to unravel. The cabin, once filled only with the laughter of his daughter and the hum of his tools, now felt like a fortress under siege. Ethan barely slept. Every night he took the shotgun down from the mantel and sat by the window, watching the tree line while the wind whispered through the pines. Something was wrong. Twice he'd seen headlights pause on the distant dirt road before disappearing into the darkness. The second time, he'd gone outside at dawn and found tire tracks, military-grade treads, imprinted deep in the mud. Claire was sitting near the fire when he returned, her wound healing, but her eyes haunted. "They're looking for me," she said quietly, as if reading his mind. "And if they find me here, they won't leave witnesses." Ethan's jaw clenched. "Then you'd better tell me what I'm protecting my daughter from." Claire hesitated, then pulled a small flash drive from a pouch she'd kept hidden under her uniform. "Operation Falcon," she said. "It was supposed to dismantle an illegal arms ring overseas. But what I found, it was inside our own command. Officers selling weapons, silencing those who asked questions. I downloaded the evidence, but before I could report it, they came for me." Ethan took the drive, staring at it as if it were a live grenade. "You mean to tell me soldiers our own tried to kill you to hide this?" She nodded, tears glistening in the firelight. "They'll kill anyone who stands between them and that file." Outside, the wind howled harder, branches scraping against the windows like warning fingers. Lily sat nearby coloring, blissfully unaware of the storm closing in around them. Ethan's stomach twisted with the weight of it all. This wasn't just about helping a stranger anymore. This was about survival. That night, while Claire slept, Ethan stepped outside and stared into the darkness. He felt the pull of fear, but beneath it something else. Resolve. He remembered his wife's dying words. "Promise me you'll raise Lily to be brave." That promise burned in his chest now. When he came back inside, he found Claire awake, her eyes fixed on the door. "You don't have to stay," she whispered. "You've done enough." Ethan shook his head. "I don't leave people behind. My brother died in the service so others could live. Not about to dishonor that." Claire's eyes softened, a flicker of hope replacing despair. But neither of them knew that miles away, in a black SUV parked under the cover of the woods, 2 men were already watching the cabin through binoculars. One of them spoke into a radio, his voice cold and certain. "Target confirmed. We move at dawn." Dawn came gray and silent, the kind of eerie stillness that settles before a storm of a different kind. Ethan felt it before he heard it, the crunch of boots on gravel, the faint hum of engines idling somewhere beyond the trees. He moved quickly, whispering for Lily to stay quiet, his pulse hammering in his ears. Claire was already awake, sitting upright with her pistol in hand, her soldier's instincts fully returned. "They found us," she murmured, her eyes narrowing toward the window. A black SUV rolled slowly into view, followed by another. Ethan caught a glimpse of men in tactical gear fanning out through the forest. "They're not police," he said under his breath. "No badges. No lights." Claire's jaw tightened. private contractors. Mercs on the Army's payroll. She moved to the window, pulling the curtain just enough to see. They won't stop until they have the drive. Or my body. Ethan grabbed his shotgun from the mantel, the weight familiar but heavier now with purpose. Then they'll have to go through me first. He ushered Lily into a hidden crawl space under the stairs, placing her stuffed rabbit in her arms. No matter what you hear, you stay here until I come for you, he whispered, his voice trembling only slightly. She nodded, eyes wide and wet. The first shot shattered the morning calm. A bullet slicing through the kitchen window, splintering wood and glass. Ethan hit the floor, rolling behind the table as Claire fired back, her movement sharp, disciplined, every shot precise. The firefight erupted like thunder, echoing through the valley. Bullets tore through the walls. Smoke filled the air as one of the mercs lobbed a flashbang through the front door. The explosion of light and sound left Ethan disoriented, his ears ringing, but Claire dragged him up, shouting, "Truck, back exit." Together, they stumbled through the kitchen and out the rear door, ducking behind the rusted pickup. "Get in," Ethan yelled, hot-wiring it with shaking hands as bullets sparked off the metal hood. The engine roared to life and the truck lurched forward, fishtailing through mud as more rounds whizzed past. Claire leaned out the window, returning fire until the magazine clicked empty. "Drive toward the river," she yelled. "There's a bridge, they'll bottleneck there." Ethan pushed the accelerator, the tires throwing up water and gravel. The forest blurred past in streaks of green and gray, the sound of pursuit behind them relentless. One SUV gained on them, its headlights cutting through the mist. Claire pulled the pin from a smoke grenade she'd hidden in her vest and tossed it out the window. The dense white cloud engulfed the road, buying them precious seconds. As they crossed the bridge, she pressed a small flash drive into Ethan's palm. "If I don't make it," she said, her breath ragged, "you give this to Colonel Hayes at Fort Raven. He's the only one you can trust." Ethan turned to protest, but her blood was already spreading across the seat again. Behind them, the forest glowed with the light of approaching vehicles. Ahead, the unknown awaited. The siege had begun, but the war for truth was just starting. The sun was just beginning to rise when Ethan's truck burst from the forest and onto the old highway, its tires screeching across the cracked asphalt. The rearview mirror reflected chaos. 2 black SUVs gaining fast, engines growling like wolves on the hunt. Claire slumped beside him, her face pale, her uniform soaked through with blood. "Stay with me," Ethan shouted, one hand on the wheel, the other pressing a torn jacket against her wound. Her eyelids fluttered, her breathing shallow. "You have to make it to Fort Raven," she whispered. "Colonel Hayes, he's the only one who knows I'm not a traitor." Ethan's throat tightened, fear clawing at his chest. "Don't you dare give up now," he said through gritted teeth. The road ahead wound through mist and pine, the horizon glowing faintly with morning light. He knew every mile between here and the city could be his last, but he refused to stop. Then pop, a tire blew. The truck spun, skidding sideways into a ditch, smoke billowing from the hood. Ethan cursed under his breath and looked toward the faint outline of a hospital down the hill. He lifted Claire into his arms again, staggering toward it as sirens wailed in the distance. "You're gonna be okay," he muttered, though his voice cracked with doubt. When he burst through the ER doors, nurses rushed forward, eyes widening at the bloodied soldier, and the man holding her. "Please, she's been shot," Ethan pleaded. They whisked her away, leaving him in the corridor trembling, the flash drive still clutched in his fist. A uniformed officer approached moments later, asking questions, but Ethan said nothing until he saw a badge that made his heart drop. Military police. He didn't trust anyone. "I'll only talk to Colonel Hayes," he said firmly, echoing Claire's words. Hours crawled by until a tall man in full dress uniform entered the waiting room, his face grim but familiar from Claire's stories. "I'm Colonel Hayes," he said. "Who are you?" Ethan stood, exhaustion written in every line of his body. "The guy who found one of your soldiers dying on the road. She said to give you this." He handed over the flash drive. Hayes took it, inserting it into his encrypted laptop right there on the spot. As the files loaded, his expression shifted from confusion to horror. "Good God," he murmured. She was right. Everything she said. The screen displayed documents, transactions, proof of an arms deal involving several high-ranking officials. "You have no idea what you've done, Mr. Miller," Hayes said quietly. "You just saved lives and the integrity of the service." But when Ethan asked about Claire, the colonel's face softened. "She's in critical condition. We're doing everything we can." Hours later, as the hospital quieted, a nurse handed Ethan an envelope with shaky handwriting on the front. For Ethan and Lily. Inside were Claire's dog tags and a note stained with dried blood. "You didn't just save me. You saved what I fought for." Ethan's vision blurred with tears. He clenched the tags in his fist, whispering, "You kept your promise, Claire. Now it's my turn." A month had passed since that night on the road when Ethan Miller's quiet world collided with the chaos of a secret war. The cabin, once scarred with bullet holes and fear, now stood silent beneath the morning sun, the smell of pine and smoke finally fading. The news had spread across the nation. "Whistleblower soldier exposes military corruption," the headlines read, but few knew the name of the civilian who had risked everything to bring her truth to light. Ethan didn't care for attention. He only cared that his daughter could sleep again, without fear, that the ghosts of that stormy night had finally begun to drift away. Still, some mornings he'd wake before dawn, walk out to the porch with a cup of black coffee, and stare at the horizon as if expecting Claire to come walking out of the mist again. But she never did. When the convoy arrived that afternoon, he thought it was a mistake at first. A line of military vehicles pulling up the dirt road, engines rumbling softly. Colonel Hayes stepped out, his expression solemn, his hat tucked under one arm. Behind him, two soldiers carried a folded American flag and a small wooden box. "Mr. Miller," Hayes said, voice steady but heavy with emotion. "Sergeant Claire Dawson didn't survive her injuries. But before she passed, she requested this be delivered to you and your daughter." Ethan swallowed hard as the colonel handed him the box. Inside lay a Medal of Honor, engraved with Claire's name, alongside a letter sealed with the Army insignia. He opened it with trembling hands. "For courage beyond the call of duty," it read, "to the civilian who stood when others turned away." Tears blurred his vision. Lily stood beside him, clutching Claire's dog tags that she now wore around her neck like a treasure. "She was a hero, Daddy," Lily whispered. Ethan nodded, his voice caught in his throat. "She was more than that, sweetheart. She was family." That evening, as the sun sank behind the hills, Ethan built a small memorial by the oak tree behind their cabin. A simple wooden cross with Claire's name carved into it, her medal hanging from a nail. He and Lily placed wildflowers at its base, their colors glowing in the fading light. The wind stirred gently, carrying with it the faint sound of distant drums. Or maybe it was just his heart remembering. "Thank you," Ethan whispered to the air, "for your fight, for your faith in me." The next morning, the world felt a little lighter. The military had begun its investigation. Arrests were made, and Claire Dawson's bravery became a symbol of integrity across the country. But for Ethan and Lily, her legacy lived quietly, in the laughter that returned to their home, in the sense of peace that replaced fear, and in the framed photograph that now sat on their mantel, a soldier smiling, her uniform crisp, her eyes full of the courage that had changed their lives forever. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share for more emotional stories only on Drew Daily Stories, where every story reminds us that kindness can change the world.